the best trails of 2023. I'm Bonnie, and today I am going to be sharing with you some of my favorite trails that I got to explore in 2023. This is going to be my top 5 trails, including some honorable mentions. And of course, because this is Wandering Washington, I'm going to be keeping the focus on Washington, but I did some exploring outside of the state this year, and I will be giving some shout outs to some amazing places outside of Washington as well. Before we get into the list, I want to share some statistics. So in 2023, I explored 70 trails, 55 of which were inside of Washington and 15 of which were outside of Washington in Wyoming and Idaho. I visited all 3 national parks in Washington this year, which was amazing, and I also got to visit some national parks and a national monument outside of Washington as well. Of those 70 trails, I covered 355 miles and did 116,324 feet of elevation gain. So on to the list. This is a very biased list, just my personal bias of the kinds of trails that I enjoy and the kinds of places that I am particularly captivated by. And we're going to start off with 2 honorable mentions. These are 2 trails that would have made the top 5, but they just got eked out for whatever reason. It's just a personal preference thing. The first of which is a mountain I had been wanting to climb for quite some time. That would be Snoqualmie Mountain. This was definitely a memorable summit for me in 2023. The climb was challenging, but it was gorgeous, and the views from the top, that is one of those summits where it feels really good to reach the top, and that is a feeling that I'm definitely going to remember. Also, the views were incredible. Getting to see Snow Lake from above was so cool and was something that I wasn't expecting. I didn't know that view was there, but man, am I so glad I climbed to get it. But yeah, Snoqualmie Mountain was definitely one of the highlights in peak bagging for me this year. It was just a really cool mountain to climb, and I really had a lot of fun with it. My second honorable mention goes to a trail I did in Olympic National Park, and that would be Lake of the Angels. This trail was the first time I had ever gotten to go see the Alpine in Olympic National Park, and it was just stunning. I went at the peak of wildflower season, and I really enjoyed that the trail was challenging and steep. The scrambling parts were really fun, and the valley with the lake was just serene. I don't think I have ever seen more perfect alpine water than Lake of the Angels. But it's definitely a trail that made me want to go back and also made me want to do more exploring in the alpine of Olympic National Park. Those were the honorable mentions. On to the list. I'm going to be starting with number 5 and going up to number 1. And my number 5 spot is going to be a trail that we have seen on the best of videos before, and that would be the Enchantments. I was fortunate enough to snag a permit to backpack the Enchantments this year at the last minute, and it is just a magical place. The Enchantments are aptly named, and the entire trail is incredible, but getting to camp there overnight and see the sunsets and the sunrises is just something else. The sunrise in the Enchantments is one of the most memorable things I have ever seen in the Alpine, and it really is just a incredible place with amazing wildlife viewing, some of the most incredible looking peaks in the state, and it's always something really special when you get to spend time in a place like that. And this is a place that is very special to me, and I find it to be so inspiring for art and just appreciating the absolute beauty of Washington's wilderness. But I have gone on about this trail before. It's the Enchantments. It definitely deserves a spot in the top 5. And going off of that, before we get into number 4, I am going to shout out the best lake or tarn, and that would be one of the lakes in the Enchantments called Mist Pond. I am very captivated by this little tarn at the base of Dragon Tail near the top of Asgard Pass. It is so pretty with its beautiful milky white color, and I was able to go and wade in it when I went backpacking, and I think it's just one of those little lakes that is just so tranquil. It feels like it's just in the middle of nowhere, but it also has this like feeling that it's surrounded by a cathedral of Dragontail Peak. It is just so beautiful. I love Miss Pond so much. So that was definitely my favorite little tarn that I saw this year. But speaking of lakes, coming in at the number 4 spot, we have Lake Blanca. Lake Blanca is another trail that I have done multiple times, and it is just beautiful start to finish. I love the forest in the Wild Sky Wilderness, and I think the Lake Blanca trail shows it off beautifully. There's so much gorgeous old growth, huckleberry meadows, moss, and then once you get up onto the ridge and you get some of the views of Glacier Peak, and then finally you get to descend into the basin where you see Lake Blanca. And I'm gonna let the footage do the talking because the color of this lake is unreal. It's something that you really just have to see in person to really understand just how crazy the color of this lake is. And of course I got to do something that I have wanted to do for many years, and that is go swimming in Lake Blanca, which was so much fun and very refreshing after a hard hike, let me tell you. And now, before we get into number 3, I want to shout out the best trail that I did outside of Washington. I did a road trip this year going from Grand Teton to Yellowstone to Craters of the Moon, and so I saw a lot of really amazing places outside of Washington and some kinds of landscapes that you can't see in my home state. And the one that stuck out to me would be Upper Geyser Basin in Yellowstone National Park. There is really nowhere else like this in the world, and I think I had an incredible time exploring this boardwalk and trail system. We saw 4 geysers going off when we did this loop, including the eruption of Grand Geyser, which was the highlight of the trip for me. It is a massive geyser that shoots water hundreds of feet into the air. It was just crazy, and there really is nothing else like it. And just getting to see all of these beautiful little pools that are all so different, they all have their different character to them. That is a place that is just so memorable, and I would absolutely go back. But like, that has to be the highlight of exploring outside of Washington this year. Like, getting to see so many geysers in such a unique place was just amazing. Coming in at number 3, we have a trail that is in my personal favorite place in Washington, and that would be a trail in North Cascades National Park. Trappers Peak is one of those trails that I think really shows off why the North Cascades is called America's Alps. The views from Trappers Peak of the Pickets, Mount Triumph, were just like I was walking in a painting. I really can't describe it any other way. Seeing the tiered lakes, the amazing jagged peaks and everything, it really did feel like just something out of a fantasy. And the trail itself was really fun. Starts off winding through the beautiful forests of the North Cascades, and I love starting in some really pretty mossy forests. And then once you get out of it, you're on this incredible ridge line, and there's a little bit of a scramble, so it makes it extra fun. But it is just one of those trails that I think really shows off the North Cascades incredibly, and it's pretty accessible compared to some more challenging trails in North Cascades National Park. So Trappers Peak is one I would do over and over again. It was just so much fun, and the beauty that you get to see from that summit is just incredible. Now I want to give a shout out to my favorite trail this year that had under 1,000 feet of gain, because I like to push myself in terms of elevation gain and mileage. I love a challenging trail, but I definitely wanted to highlight a trail that is, you know, under 1,000 feet of gain and does not have crazy mileage. And for me, my favorite this year would be Garfield Ledges. This is such a fun little trail, and it has a beautiful view. It feels really remote where it's not that far away from major cities, and it's such a fun trail to do with family. My dogs really like this one. It's not too crowded, and the view from the top is quite beautiful, especially seeing it for sunrise, seeing the sun come down the valley and everything. It is a really beautiful trail for pretty small price to pay. You don't have to, it's under 1,000 feet of climbing. So I think it's a really great trail if you are just getting into hiking and you don't want to do a ton of game, but you want to get an amazing view and maybe do some climbing. Garfield Ledges is definitely one that I've gone back to many, many times and taken many family members. Coming in at number 2, I have Mount Daniel. What to say about Mount Daniel? This is one of those mountains I had seen from the summits of so many other peaks I had climbed, and this year I finally made the trip to go and climb this thing. It is one of Washington's classic climbs. It's one of the crown jewels of the Alpine Lakes wilderness, and I can absolutely see why. I did this as an overnight, and it was an incredible backpacking trip to do this overnight, and it was really everything I had hoped it would be. The views from the ridge line, once you reach Peggy's Pond, going up that ridge and seeing all of these beautiful hidden lakes and tarns the entire way, and then doing the final ridge walk and scramble to the summit overlooking this glacially fed lake, just stunning. I think it is one of the most scenic climbs and scenic trails I have done in Washington, and everything just went perfectly. It was one of those times where just everything went right and it was absolutely magical. But I just had so much fun. It's a challenging climb, but it was fun start to finish. There was like no sufferfest involved, and oh my gosh, Mount Daniel is just an amazing mountain, and I highly recommend it. It's really hard to put into words, so once again, I'm just gonna rely on the footage to do the talking for me. It's an amazing place, and it was just such a memorable climb for me. I'd had my eye on it for so long. It was just one of those moments where it just feels really good to finally climb the mountain you've been looking at for so many years. And then before we get into number 1, I wanted to share what my favorite sunrise was. I do a lot of hiking early in the morning, and I have seen a lot of alpine sunrises this year. It is one of my favorite parts of hiking and climbing, especially doing it early in the morning. It is always worth waking up at 3 a.m. to be able to see a gorgeous alpine sunrise. But one of the sunrises definitely stood out to me this year, and that would be the sunrise over Wing Lake in the North Cascades. That is probably one of the most beautiful sunrises I have seen in my life. It just felt like the entire world was glowing. The mountains were glowing. The larch trees with peak fall color were just on fire, and it was just so beautiful. And the colors were just insane. This is one of the things I love about alpine sunrises, is just the incredible array of color that shows off in the mountains during that like really magical like 30 minutes before and after sunrise. It's just such a special time to be out. But sunrise at Wing Lake was definitely the most memorable this year. Getting into number 1. This probably will come as no surprise to many of you, but that would be Black Peak in the North Cascades. This isn't so much of a trail as it is a climb, but Black Peak has been a goal of mine for almost 2 years now, and this year I finally made it happen. This is a challenging climb. I did it as a day climb, and it was so worth every single step. Scrambling through boulder fields, golden larch trees, beautiful alpine lakes, and then a ridge scramble to a summit in the North Cascades was just wow. No words. I got to that summit and I was like, this is the best place I have ever been in my life. The panoramic view from the summit is really indescribable as far as like just capturing the scale and the ruggedness of the North Cascades. There's a reason that the North Cascades is one of my favorite places in the world, and I really hope that the footage shows why that is. Black Peak definitely solidified that for me. I love the North Cascades, and so getting to climb one of the tallest peaks in the North Cascades and see so many of these mountains up close was just the perfect experience for me, and I could not have asked for better conditions. It was a warm fall day, peak larch colors, and clear skies, but also I was fortunate enough to have this amazing summit all to myself, and that is just like such a special experience. And it was definitely like my favorite climb I have done in Washington. It was just hard enough to like really make you earn it, but I love that feeling. And so it really wasn't going to be anything else for me this year other than Black Peak. So that is my list, and I wanted to say thank you to everyone who watches and supports the channel. It is really so lovely to see all of your encouraging comments and enjoyment of, you know, the nature that I share. I really like sharing it with all of you, and it just makes it so much fun for me to put together these videos to post for you all. And so going off of that, feel free to share what your favorite trail that you did, or what was your favorite trail that you saw me do this year. Doesn't have to be in Washington. If you are somewhere, you know, all around the world, say a fun place that you explored in 2023 below that really stood out to you. I think that would be really fun, and I'd love to know. There are so many beautiful places in the world to go and explore and hike, so it's always really special when you get to go out and experience them. And I really like sharing, you know, the places that I go with all of you. Anyway, thank you so much for watching in 2023, and stay tuned. I have a lot more trouble to get into in 2024. And I'm gonna end the video with some of my favorite pictures from 2023. Enjoy, and I will see you in the new year.